not received any word from the federal government that they are sending riot teams. I have seen those reports, but I can tell you that we've been talking to the governor of the state of Florida every single day. He's had the National Guard on standby. We haven't even needed to use the National Guard. Yesterday we had 3 arrests. No property damage, no citizen was hurt. I think we had one minor incident at a CVS where the protesters themselves tried to prevent the looters from happening on Saturday. We had a couple of cars that were burned and 5 stores in one of our malls that were vandalized. But other than that, the protests have been extremely peaceful for 2 consecutive days, and we handled them remarkably well ourselves.
Bring me up to speed here, Your Honor, because I believe that the beaches were supposed to have reopened yesterday. The riots, I'm told, delayed the reopening, and now there's a curfew in place. I think I'm accurate on all of this, so tell me, when will the beaches reopen?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing because there's a difference between Miami-Dade County and the city of Miami, and people get confused with that all the time. We actually lifted our curfew yesterday. There was no rioting in the city. The county maintained their curfew. We have 34 cities in Miami-Dade County, and the county also has jurisdictions over the beaches, not the city. The county mayor decided to extend the closure of the beaches because my understanding is his words were that his officers were tired from the weekend and he wanted to give them some time to recuperate before opening the beaches in terms of the enforcement that they would have to do for social distancing and things of that nature. But in the city, we lifted the curfew. There were no incidents last night on Sunday. Like I said, it was very, very peaceful, very little arrests, no confrontations, and no one hurt, which was the most important thing.
Your Honor, this show is called Varney and Company. It's a 3-hour show. We're almost at the end of it, and so far we've barely mentioned the virus or the lockdown. What's the status of new cases in your city and the lockdown?
What's interesting is we're progressing in opening the city, and that has continued pretty much unabated. Having thousands of demonstrators on your streets over the last 2 days is not exactly the kind of social distancing that we've been preaching for the last few weeks and months. And on Saturday, we did have to deploy tear gas, which obviously means that there were people that were coughing and sneezing, in close proximity, and potentially people that were not wearing masks. So it's not exactly a great recipe, but we don't know what the effects of all that will be. We'll know in the next couple of weeks. But until now, I think people are desperate to get back to work. They're desperate for the economy to get going, and we are continuing along that path.
Good. Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami, thank you very much for joining us, sir. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Right, here's a headline for you. Food delivery service suspended in some cities. Tell me more, Ash.
Well, as you can imagine, with everything that we've seen happen over the last several days and nights, it is difficult for these delivery services. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, for instance. Uber is suspending its service where they say in some cities, Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, sections of Minneapolis. The company says we will abide by what local officials say. However, some city officials around the country have said to Uber, please do not suspend your service. We have essential workers who don't have access to any transportation. We would much appreciate it if you would continue your service. Not easy to do. Lyft says it's following the directions of local authorities as well. DoorDash says what it can do is abide by the curfews. So these are 3 different companies obviously affected, trying to do their business, trying to get people around, trying to deliver food, but in this backdrop, very difficult indeed.
All right, Ashley, on the screens right now, the President and the First Lady, they are at the shrine of St. John Paul II. That's in Washington, D.C., of course. He's about to lay a wreath. Now, he's been inside for some minutes, conferring, no doubt, and he's about to lay that wreath, and there you see the President and the First Lady. Now, this is not quite a reprise of what we saw yesterday, when the President walked out of the White House and literally walked, I don't know how far, but it wasn't that far, a few hundred yards, I believe, across Lafayette Park, which, as you know, is opposite the White House, and he went to St. John's Church, parts of which had been burned by rioters. That caused a sensation because the president was taking back that part of DC. There was a great deal of press coverage because they cleared demonstrators out of the way, as you would have to do with any president, and that's what the media latched onto. But my bottom line is the president was out there, he went to the church, and he literally, I keep using the expression, he took back that part of the city. Now he's gone on with his motorcade across town. He's gone to this shrine of St. John Paul II. He's gone inside, a moment of prayer and contemplation now outside in front of the statue of John Paul II, and he's about to lay a wreath right there. Father Jonathan Morris is still with us. What do you make of this? Jean Paul, in case any of our viewers don't know, Jean Paul II was the great pope in the 1970s, 80s, and into the 90s.
Yeah, Stuart, he was a great pope in so many ways. He really transformed the papacy by going out to the people, traveling and being with them. But another thing he did that I think so many of us remember him for, solidarity movement in which that freed Poland from communism and worked together with Gorbachev and with President Reagan to end communism as we knew it in the Eastern Bloc. And he did it though through this solidarity movement, which was a peaceful protest of an abusive government. And I think it would be a great opportunity for the president to invoke John Paul II's name and say, as a country, we need to come together in unity and in peace. John Paul II had to a lot of other movements who were trying to use violence to attain their motives or their ends, their objectives. And John Paul II said no to that through solidarity, we can have victory. I hope President Trump invokes that same message.
There's a very good point there, Jonathan, because you're quite right. Essentially, Pope John Paul II had a huge role in defeating communism, certainly in the Soviet Union and certainly in his native Poland. And as you say, he did it peacefully. John Paul II was not a man to, he wasn't anybody to sort of shout and scream about violence and end it now and burn it down. He was the exact opposite. And yet the man was wildly successful. Good point, Jonathan, good point. Now, I'm not sure if the president's going to make any overt remarks there. I know the media is there. I'm not sure what he's going to, if he says anything. But again, I agree with you entirely. It would be a good idea for the president to stand up and say, we can beat this peacefully. Do you expect it?
Yeah, and I think, well, a lot of people criticized the president for raising up the Bible in front of the church yesterday without communicating a real message. So it looked like to some people, and I think especially some parts of the media, it was just a prop. As I mentioned earlier in the hour, I think the president could have done a better job in communicating his message. I think he could have gone into that, even though it was boarded up. He's the president of the United States. They could have figured it out and prayed together with other people and say, we are in a moment of crisis. He had just given that Law and Order speech, which was very good as Law and Order, but there needed to be a second message, and that is, we are listening to you, we hear you, to the protesters, the peaceful protesters, and we're now going to work together as a nation, as one, to attain the unity and the peace that we so desire. I hope he's able to do that today. I think even if he doesn't speak, at least this is a different.
Look, on the one hand, you've got the peaceful protesters who are supporting the family and memory of George Floyd, and I think there is almost universal approval of that, without question. That is taken as a given and a good thing by all Americans. The other side of the coin is the riotous looters, the anarchists who are out there destroying property and shooting at police officers. And that's where I differ with you, Jonathan. I don't think the President of the United States should stand up and offer some message of peace to the anarchists. They'll laugh at him. I think you offer a message of knock it off, and if you don't, we're coming after you and we're going to stop you. Yeah. That's not peace. That's not saying, peaceful. No, that's knock it off.
Yeah, he had done that with his Law and Order speech in the Rose Garden. But I think there's another message, not to the anarchists and to all of those who are looting, because they're not listening to him, but a message of peace to the country, to say, I am listening to your grievances, to you peaceful protesters. Now, we should also mention that Joe Biden gave a speech today, in which he made no mention whatsoever of looters. You know, I'm here in New York City as you are, Stuart, and how is it that we cannot protect Madison Avenue from getting looted? I would have liked to have heard Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, also speak to that. So it's got to be both and from our leaders, and we need to call our leaders, I think, to greatness. And they need to hear it from us that as a country, we need balance and we need strength, but we need to do it together.
Hold on for a second, Jonathan. I've got this coming at me right now, and I want everybody to take a look at it. This is video, and it's out of Los Angeles. The National Guard is staging a massive presence in the city. More than 20,000 guardsmen have been activated across 28 states, that is, okay? That's not just in California. This is across 28 states, 20,000. And in D.C. as well. Ashley, are we going to see them in New York City, do you know?
Well, not according to the mayor, Bill de Blasio. Earlier this morning, the President Trump said, look, New York City, call up the National Guard in a tweet. He said the lowlifes and losers are ripping you apart. Act fast. Bill de Blasio was asked about that, whether he would bring in the National Guard, and he said no. Take a listen.
We do not need, nor do we think it's wise for the National Guard to be in New York City, nor any armed forces. I'm going to tell you why. This is really important we have this out right now. If someone needs a history lesson. When outside armed forces go into communities, no good comes of it.
All right, well, I can tell you also the governor, Andrew Cuomo of New York, just saying a few minutes ago that the police in New York City are not doing a very effective job. And he said the fact that they did not protect properties from looters, he says he's outraged by what wasn't done to stop this happening in New York City. So the mayor and the governor at each other's throats again.
Yeah, no surprises there. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
All right, Ashley.
Yeah.
I believe, are going to take a short break, and we'll be back with a great deal more for you. Have we got Macy's stock up there? Yeah, just show me Macy's stock for a second. The Dow's up 120. Can you show me Macy's? I'm showing a Macy's, or I'd like